Good morning, friends. Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life. Thank you for joining us for our morning broadcast. We're going to talk about what churches should be doing about the President's accomplishments. But first, let's turn in prayer to the Lord using my book, Pro-Life Reflections for Every Day. In Matthew chapter 19, verses 13 and 14, we read, "People brought children to Jesus so that he might lay his hands on them and pray. The disciples rebuked them. But Jesus said, 'Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them.'" Reflection: the apostles mistakenly thought that Jesus didn't have time for the children, that they were not important enough for his attention, that they were a distraction from his mission. Instead, Jesus indicates that they are at the heart of his mission. Let us pray. Lord, the kingdom belongs to children. Grant that we may treat them accordingly. Amen. So if you don't yet have your copy of this book, go to prolifereflectionsforeveryday.com and you can order it. And I will sign it or inscribe it if you like, and you might want to get an additional copy to give someone as a gift, and so forth. So the President is having a rally tonight, and I want to invite you to watch it. We'll be broadcasting it live right here. It starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. He'll be speaking in Toledo, Ohio. And we encourage people not only to watch these rallies, but to get other people to watch them too. And this is what we encourage as a rally watch party. And we even have that as a website, rallywatchparty.org, where if you want to bring some people together, you can turn on the computer, put it on the screen, and bring some friends in and watch it together. We encourage you to do that, and you can, on the web page, rallywatchparty.org, let us know that you're doing that. Or at the very least, just watch it yourself, as I will be doing. And as I say, you can watch it right here on these various channels. Why do we do that? And what should churches be doing in regard to this? Well, the question, it seems to me, boils down to this. Are the voters supposed to be informed? That really is the question that this boils down to. Don't just think of this as, oh, this is a political rally, this is a political campaign. Of course, there's nothing wrong with that either. But don't think of it primarily in those terms. When I look at these rallies and when I encourage people to watch them, I'm thinking in terms of informed consent, if you will. Knowing what it is that you got if you voted for the president, knowing what it is that you, if you didn't vote for him, what you missed out on supporting, and knowing what you're going to continue to get if you vote for him again. Now, being informed is not the final decision. It's the step before the final decision, right? In other words, you're not, by informing somebody about what a candidate has accomplished, and in this case, the candidate is also the current president, by informing somebody about what the candidate and his administration has accomplished, doesn't say you have to vote for him. Of course, if you don't like the accomplishments, then fine, vote against them. But not to know what those accomplishments are, well, then a person is not able to act in full freedom. The more we know about the implications and consequences of our choices, the more free we are when we make those choices, the more morally responsible we can be in carrying out those choices. So there's a moral dimension to this. When we talk about choices and we talk about morality, you know, one of the elements that we use in the church, in traditional ethical thought and moral philosophy, is look at the consequences of your choices. So knowledge, as one of you is saying now, knowledge is power. It certainly is. It's very important power, because the other dimension of the morality of our choices is how they affect other people. So if we see that a particular president and his administration is doing things that have a particular effect on the nation, on the people, including on the people we care about and our families and our children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and generations to come, We can't be properly responsible morally, and this, of course, is what the church calls us to do, if we don't know. Let me read one of the comments Valerie is making here. Father, it doesn't surprise me that you are practically the lone voice in our church that recognizes the greatness and significance of President Donald Trump. My heart aches when I see the support he gets from evangelicals, but nowhere do we see a Catholic priest or bishop standing with them. Very sad, but given the corrupt state of our church, I'm not surprised. I remain a faithful Catholic because I see the big picture, as do you. Okay, Valerie, so thank you very much for that comment. And, our evangelical brothers and sisters are very coming out very strongly in support of the president, and I have been with them. In fact, I was invited along with Alveda to the recent event in Miami, the Evangelicals for Trump. And you'll be happy to know that there is a Catholic advisory council, coalition, for the president, for the campaign. I was part of it in 2016, and it will be organized again for this re-election campaign. And this is very much to the heart of what I want to share with all of you this morning, that, being a member of the church, being religious, being a Catholic, and being a priest, does not mean that we're supposed to be closing ourselves off from any aspect of our life, our day-to-day lives in society. And one of those big aspects, of course, is our political life, and one of the big aspects of that is who sits in the White House. Because it's not just the man who sits in the White House, it is all the people that he brings with him, the whole administration. It's a whole worldview. This was the point I was making on last night's broadcast, which if you didn't see it, you can watch it posted here on all these platforms. The point that this election is not about personalities. It's not about the persona. So many people get distracted by what they think, and a lot of times it's rash judgment. Hint, hint, clergy, churches, priests, everybody else that dresses like I do, rash judgment. Might we want to say something against that in our preaching? So many people have formed their opinions about the president based on rash judgment. But putting that aside for the moment, the campaign and the election and our vote is not about the persona, it's not about the personality, it's about the policies, it's about the worldview, and the man sitting in the Oval Office is the messenger of that. There is an entire message, there's an entire worldview, and all the people that he surrounds himself with and the people that staff the various agencies are the ones implementing that worldview day by day by day. And that's where it has the effect on the rest of us. So people will say, oh, well, Father Frank is one of the only voices in the church speaking out. Well, I would say one of the only voices among the clergy speaking out. But the church, of course, includes you. We are all the church. And I know that there are so many of you, including in all these comments here that we're getting today, very, very vocal, very, very supportive of the president. And this is not a superficial thing, and that's what I want to get to this morning. His accomplishments. To be an informed voter, which is part of our moral responsibility. Remember, it's part of the church's teachings, not only that we vote and that we have the duty to vote, but it flows immediately from that we have the duty to be informed so that we vote the right way. The right way. And knowing about his accomplishments is key to that. I want to read what you will find, the headlines that you will find on a special website that I want to urge you to go to today to read and to spread to others. And that is promiseskept.com. One of the things that the president and the vice president love to say, and it's true, is that they are in the promise-keeping business. It's very easy for politicians, especially when they're campaigning, to make promises, it's very difficult and in fact rare when they're governing for them to keep the promises. Campaigning, of course, is different from governing. Governing is a lot harder no matter what side of the fence you're on, because then you're dealing with a lot of contrary dynamics and you've got to negotiate and you've got to maneuver and balance and compromise and so forth. So governing is a lot harder than campaigning. But when you see someone in his or her governing actually carrying out the promises that they made when they were campaigning, then you have found a good leader when those accomplishments are moving our nation in the right direction. So if you go to promiseskept.com, you're going to see a nice summary of the accomplishments of this administration. Now, there is a long list of pro-life accomplishments, very, very real ones. Those of us who understand that the right to life is the foundation for every other right, and why one would not understand that, I don't understand. We know that he has made tremendous accomplishments, more accomplishments in the pro-life arena than any other administration or president has done. So if you go to promiseskept.com, here's what you're going to see. Now, these are just the headlines, the buttons. And on each of these headlines, which I'm going to summarize, then you see an entire long list and description of the accomplishments. Let's go through these, because my message here about the churches is very simple. What the churches need to do in terms of the accomplishments of our president is to let their people know. We're not talking about making the church into a political party or campaign. We're talking about making the church into a vehicle for equipping the people of God to go change society, for equipping the people of God to carry out the Great Commission of Christ, to go make disciples of all the nations, teach them to carry out everything I have commanded you. Well, how are we going to do that if we don't even know what's going on? And it's very easy to miss what's going on because we have a biased media. It's more than bias, it's hatred for this president and for his administration. So churches, let me ask you this, before I read the summary of these accomplishments. Here's the choice. Do you want your people to be captive to hatred and lies? Or do you want them to know the truth? I'm not saying you have to endorse a candidate. Do you want your people to be captive to hatred and lies, or do you want them to know the truth? Do you want them to understand the moral implications of their choices in the voting booth in 2020 and the implications that their choices are going to have for the nation and for their families and for their children and grandchildren? And in fact, do you want your parishioners to know the implications of their voting choices for the church? For the church. Because the freedom of the church to be the church, the freedom of the parish to teach and preach, the freedom of the church to do the things Jesus Christ commands her to do is at stake in this election. It's at stake. Religious freedom is on the line. And do you want your people to know about that? I'm talking now to the clergy. Do you yourself know, fully understand the danger that your own freedom is in for being able to teach and preach the things of the church? Watch the rally tonight. You'll hear our president talk about religious freedom. The freedom we have to do the things we believe Christ is commanding us to do. Okay, let's take a look. Go to promiseskept.com and here's the headings that you'll see. Economy and jobs. President Trump jump-started America's economy into record growth, which created jobs and increased take-home pay for working Americans. Now that's just the headline. It's not talking here. You click on that and then you'll see the record levels of employment, the record lows of unemployment, the millions and millions of jobs created, etc. Immigration. President Trump has protected the American homeland by enforcing immigration laws. Notice, friends, that is the job of the executive branch of government, as our grade school students learn, to enforce the existing laws. The existing laws. It protected the homeland by enforcing immigration laws so that every American can feel safe in their community. Wow, that's something churches might want to promote. Foreign policy. By promoting fair and reciprocal trade, President Trump put America first. This includes exiting TPP, renegotiating NAFTA, and securing major new bilateral deals with major trading partners. Good foreign policy. National security and defense. President Trump rebuilt our military, crushed ISIS, and confronted rogue nations to protect America and our allies. You know, he goes into these arenas and speaks about justice, and speaks about fairness, and speaks about economic justice. He's actually putting into practice in the public arena the very things that we preach from the pulpit and read about in the catechism. So shouldn't the churches be talking about this and informing people what's going on? Regulation. President Trump removed red tape and ended unnecessary regulations that stifle economic growth and prosperity. Land and agriculture. President Trump created a task force on agriculture and rural prosperity that included actions to improve the lives of rural Americans. Law and justice. President Trump partnered with local communities and worked with local law enforcement to protect American communities. Energy and environment. President Trump reversed years of policies that locked up American energy and restricted our ability to sell to other countries. I always remember growing up, you know, when the news would talk about the Middle East, you know, it was always that, oh, they have the oil, Oh, we better, you know, be careful not to get in trouble with them because otherwise they'll keep the oil and we won't get any. You know, thanks to the president's administration now, the United States of America is the world's #1 exporter of oil and natural gas. That's astonishing. When we think about how so many of us grew up thinking about, you know, the Middle East oil. It's America. We're energy independent now. Government accountability. One of President Trump's biggest campaign promises was to make a government by and for the people. Throughout his term so far, the president has worked to drain the swamp and create more transparency. It's almost like the government is preaching to the church, right? We need some transparency in the governance of the church. Well, there has to be transparency in the governance of the government too, and the president is committed to that, and he's making it happen. Churches should be talking about this. Let's inform our people what's going on. Healthcare. President Trump repealed the Obamacare individual mandate, expanded plan choices, and increased competition to bring down the costs for consumers. Infrastructure and technology. President Trump built stronger rural communities by ensuring Americans have access to the quality infrastructure that they deserve. Social programs. President Trump and his administration protected life by fighting back against illegal drug shipments, opioid abuse, and abortion providers. Now, again, these are just headlines. There's a couple more I'll read at promiseskept.com. You click on each of these and you see a long list of actual accomplishments. These are not promises. These are accomplishments. These are not simply promises. These are promises kept. These are not simply campaign slogans. These are things that he has governed and done. These are not just hopes for the future. These are concrete fruits now. And shouldn't churches be talking about this? Telling people about this? Urging people from a moral perspective to be informed about the implications here for their families and for our country and for future generations? The list of pro-life accomplishments is long, and including the federal courts, the transformation of the federal courts, not just 2 new justices on the Supreme Court, but some 180 other judges in the federal courts all across our nation that'll be making decisions for their lifetime and the lifetime of many of the rest of us. Incredible. Education. President Trump and his administration supported the expansion of school choice across the country, so every parent has a voice in their child's education. Read the Catechism of the Catholic Church, and you tell me whether this isn't a key priority for the church. Parents' responsibility and primary role in the education of their children, that is exactly what the church teaches. Shouldn't the church be saying, hey, the president is making it happen? And finally, veterans. President Trump made sure the government fulfilled its commitment to our country's veterans by reforming the VA, including firing the 500 worst managers in the agency and providing education and health benefits. You'll hear, if you listen to the rally tonight, he usually brings up the VA Choice, which is one of his accomplishments, and giving these veterans quicker access and more choice in their own health care. You know, here's my question for churches. We want our people to be ignorant of these things, or do we want them to know them? And if we see the importance of people knowing these accomplishments, and these are ongoing too, these are accomplishments that he and his administration continue to build on. We want our people to know about this, or we want them to stay in the dark? We want them to see the things that have been accomplished, or we want them just to hear the complaints of those who hate the president? We have a role as churches to be truth tellers, to equip our people to go into the world and to make a change. Let's urge them to watch the rally. The next one is tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll broadcast it right here. RallyWatchParty.org is the website where you can sign up to let us know that you want to have a watch party. And listen to what he says. He'll reference many of these accomplishments. But again, go to promiseskept.com and read through and share it with others. Today, let's waste no time. We don't want to be doing this only on the eve of Election Day. Let's waste no time. Let's start helping people to focus in on these promises that were kept. And here's one more point. And you'll hear me make this point repeatedly throughout this election cycle. The only reason that the Democrat side of the aisle is going through all this nonsense with this impeachment hoax is that they don't want these accomplishments to be what's on the front page and the headlines, or in your mind, or in our discussion. They don't want these things to be the focus of the news. Because if these things are the focus of the news, then people are going to say, hey, you know what? We're making some pretty good progress. This is a president and an administration that should be allowed to continue for another 4 years. If they don't hear about these things and they fill the vacuum just with suspicion on the part of those who care nothing about anyone's reputation, not even the President of the United States, and who believe stupidly and corruptly that people have to prove their innocence rather than their accusers proving their guilt, well, those are the ones, that's what they want to fill this, the news cycles and the headlines and your thinking and my thinking and our conversations. But the fact of the matter is we choose very wisely and we choose very well when we choose to inform ourselves and get our people informed. So, yes, you know, I was wondering the same thing. Was that Louise or Lewis? How can the Catholic Church support such a low life? Well, first of all, I don't know who you mean by the Catholic Church. But yeah, you know, why Catholics vote for Democrats has been a very, very common question that I have gotten as well. And maybe you could help us answer that question. Do a little research into the Democrats and Talk about low life. It's taking the entire policy of our nation and putting it on the lowest rung of the ladder of morality. You know, it's rubbish what they do. It's complete rubbish. The platform of the Democrat Party, the actions, the policies, the judges, corrupt, and they tear up the Constitution. They couldn't care any less about the Constitution. Do you have a copy of it in your pocket? It's one of the things I do, my friends. I would invite you to do it too. Carry around a copy of the United States Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. We all have a copy of our Bibles, certainly, hopefully. And a copy of the Constitution, not a bad thing to have. The lowlifes that call themselves Democrats in public office today, my goodness, they could not care less about the Constitution of the United States. They trash it, they distort it, they ignore it, they trample it underfoot. They care more about what some leader in some other country thinks than about what our founding fathers thought. Shame on them, and shame on each and every person who supports them. It's time for no-nonsense talk. It's time for no-nonsense action. Let's come together, folks, as never before. Let's save this nation and our church and the unborn. So, may the Lord bless you today. Watch the rally with us tonight, 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and may God grant all your prayers and make you effective witnesses to the unborn. And may He bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Father Frank Pavone here, Priest for Life. Talk to you soon. Hey, everybody.